Welcome to the Creator's Journal podcast, where we discuss creativity and mindsets that lead to fulfilling and productive lives. This podcast features many meaningful discussions with others about creative lessons, how they apply to life, how they apply to business, and they all revolve around the underlying excitement and joy that we as creatives feel when we apply creativity to the world around us in our own unique way. I think that feeling is incredible. We share creative lessons in business, athletics, mindfulness, journaling, meditation, whatever the domain, to help us grow not just as designers and creatives, but as people. So get out your mental journal, fire up your internal creative software. Thank you for tuning in, and please enjoy the show. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Creative Journal podcast. I'm super excited to have you guys here today. Just got back from the gym, so I'm nice and relaxed. I'm in a nice chill mood, feeling nice and insulin sensitive. I've been fasting for a little bit. So today's episode, as you can probably tell by the title, is 3 books that have changed my entrepreneurial journey in 2023. If you guys don't know, I love reading. I read a ton of books. I read over 50 books this year between audio and analog physical books. And something I need to get a lot better at moving into 2024 is to work on my information capture. I have a database in Notion. I talk about this a lot, that I use for book summaries and so forth. And I have the journal. I'm always using the journal, but I feel like I think a lot of people relate to this as well, where you feel like you're not retaining the stuff that you read. And it's always frustrating when you want to recall that information or really get into implementing it. And you just kind of resort to whatever you're listening to in the moment. Like, I'm very good about taking action on books that I'm either listening to or reading at that point in time. But I feel like past that, I lose a lot of it. So today, I think a good point of retaining some of the information that I learned from these books is to teach it, but treat it like school almost, in a good way, because it's self-study. But, treat reading as if you're studying for an exam and you have to give a lecture on it. And a good part of my career is that I have this podcast where, I have this audience and you guys, and I can distill this information from these 3 books in an entertaining and hopefully valuable way. So without further ado, these are the 3 books that have helped me and changed the trajectory of my entrepreneurial journey in 2023, and I highly recommend you read them to get your 2024 started off on a good foot. So title number 1, I just have these books in front of me, and I have my notes out, so the plan is to just list all 3 books in order and give a brief summary and overview and why I recommend you should read them. And if you don't want to read it, then this should give you a good idea of whether or not this will be a good one to add into your rotation. Ryan Holiday says this thing about you should be and James Clear said this other thing about when you're selecting books, you should be very picky, because you only have a certain number of books allotted in your time. If you think about it, if you can only read 20 or 30 books a year, that's a very high clip. That's one in like every 2 weeks. If you can read 20 or 30 books a year, you're doing great. If you span that out over the rest of your life, that means you only get to read, like in my case, I'm pretty young, I'm 22, so I have a lot of time left. But if you're older, I know some of our audience is a bit older, and if you're in your 40s and 50s, you only have a couple hundred books left to read. And when you start to look at it through that lens, you want to really scan the book like James Clear says. I know we quote him a lot on the show, but scan the book like a hawk looking for a mouse. You're looking for the information that you're going to implement is going to be valuable. And it doesn't have to be that stringent. I mean, you can relax a little bit when you're reading, because it is supposed to be enjoyable. But like I said, part of the reason I'm making these podcasts about these books is this is genuinely so important. Like, reading is the highest ROI, one of the top ROI habits that I have implemented in my career. And there are times when I struggle to pick it up. Social media can get the better of me sometimes personally, But after you read and while you're reading, if you're engrossed in a good book and you feel like you're really getting value from it, there's nothing that beats that. And I think having physical books and even listening on audio just is just such a good use of your time. And between audiobooks and podcasts, I listened to almost 60,000 minutes, which is crazy if you think about it. That's like almost 2 months straight of listening, which I don't know, is probably not a lot for some people. But I think when you're listening to podcasts and audiobooks, that tends to be a lot of time. But anyway, without further ado, I know I'm rambling, and I really am excited to share these 3 titles with you guys and use this as your own audio litmus test of whether you think this would be a good 3 books for you to read, because these books changed my life, and I'm excited to share them with you guys. So diving in, first title is called Creativity for Sale by Radim Malinick. And this guy gets kind of grandfathered in because he was on the show a couple weeks ago, and we're going to release his episode next year. But this book is just, it came at a really good time in my career, and it's very top of mind as well because I just read it a couple weeks ago, but I promise you that's not why it made the list. But it's, Radim is a creative born in the Czech Republic. He now lives in London. But he released 2 books this year, one Creativity for Sale, 2 The Mindful Creative, and they're beautiful books. He sent them both to me, and I can't be more grateful. He sent me the audio copies and a physical copy. By the way, all these books will be linked down below. They're not affiliate links or anything like that, but if any one person reads any of these 3 books and it has any impact on them, then that would mean the world to me. So these are my recommendations, and they're going to be down below afterwards. But back to Creativity for Sale. The subtitle, How to Start and Grow a Life-Changing Creative Career and Business. This book is very unique in the fact that it's literally so beautiful. There's 3 colors in it. And Radim told me it took him almost a year to design and put the content inside of it. But and what was really interesting as well, it's divided into 9 simple chapters, and they're all one-word titles. He said the inspiration was he wanted it to be like a record. He has a strong background in music, and he said that's a big part of how his mind works. So there's 9 chapters: 1 introduction, 2 the power of 1, 3 define, 4 build, 5 amplify, 6 money, 7 clients, 8 tools, and 9 grow. I've already implemented these into my business just since starting, and these are the things that run through my head all day, every day. And to hear, an audio version, someone else talking about these things at the time in my life when I'm really already learning on the job of how to do these things, when I'm starting to build my client base, define my offer, do all these creative business things, get CPA, business, accounting, clients, tools. He lays it out in such a succinct and easy to digest way. Even tools, like, okay, come on, what's more confusing than all the creative and business tools that there are out there? Like, there's thousands. And he not just gives his recommendation, but he literally just lays it out. And he divides them super well. So if you're looking for tools, he has a great list of free tools that you can use to grow your business, whether it's CRMs, creative software, audio, video editing, anything like that. And he lines out like expenses and just very practical knowledge and with examples. And I never found myself getting bored reading this. Like the ROI I've gotten from this book is tried and true. And I am super excited to release the episode with Radim because it was a great conversation. And I feel a strong kinship with him as he goes throughout his creative career and shares those lessons as well, because he's been through it. He's about double my age, so we had an interesting moment on the podcast where he started his creative entrepreneurial journey at the same age as I was, exactly at 22. And I wouldn't say I'm just getting started. I've been at this for a little bit, but this is the year that I've really taken it seriously and really started to see financial change in a meaningful way, and I'm all in. So if you're all in as well on your creative entrepreneurial journey, Creativity for Sale is a great title. So highly recommend, and it'll be linked down below. Title number 2 is called Someday is Today by Matthew Dix. And this was a book I honestly did not think I would like. Funny enough, I I listened to an interview of Matthew Dix, the author, and I thought he was annoying as hell, man. I'm not even gonna lie. But his audiobook was available on Hoopla. By the way, the best sources for books, give a little shout out to you guys, and hopefully this will be of high value to you. Hoopla, if your local library uses that, you can redeem a library card through there. Libby, Melinda from work told me about this. Shout out Melinda. She is awesome. Got me hooked, and I've read so many books through Libby, both free tools that you can get library cards, and there's a pretty good selection. And another one was Audible, which sucks because you have to pay not just for the service, but also for the books that you buy. So, but they do have a free 1 month trial, and you can use that as many times as you want, with as many emails as you have. So, as many Amazon accounts as you have. My mistake. But I've used that, and the other one I use is Spotify Premium. Now you get 15 hours a month of books. So those are the four destinations to get audiobooks. And physical books obviously can come from the library. And if it's a meaningful book for you, just buy it on Amazon. I've bought a few. If it's one you really want to read, having a physical copy is never going to hurt, especially if you're going to get value from it. So back to Someday is Today by Matthew Dix. This ended up being one of my favorite books of the entire year. And obviously it is, but that's why it's made this list. But the reason I loved it so much was he's just unapologetically himself, and that comes through in every single word of the book. But I don't know if I'd call it a self-help book, but it's basically practical tools that any creative can use, and tells Matthew's life story. He has an incredible story. Some of the things the way he thinks, the way his mind works was so incredible just to hear and him talk about. He talks about his approach to creativity, facing creative barriers, and he interposes that with his life story. And I have so many good notes on on some of the practical things that I've taken away and used for my own creative journey. He talks about his approach to sleep, how efficiency of sleep is far more important than quantity. So if you can focus on getting in bed and not wasting time, his approach to time as a whole in general is one of the biggest takeaways as well. He has this thing he says throughout the book is called minutes matter. And he goes into all these rabbit holes of how he tracks his time doing these things. He had this story about how he cleans his dishwasher and how he compounds that time over X amount of years if he spends a certain number of more seconds doing it. And he's also really good at task switching, so he can jump into writing right away. He's good. Another great concept he has was the concept of a burglar bag, that is. And his idea is he always has something on hand for when time is out of his control. So he'll always have his laptop, or he can write. If he can't write, he'll always have stationery on hand, because he writes over 100 letters a year. And he always has something that he can do that is a high value use of his time. And I've implemented that as well. So for example, if I'm held up like at the doctor or something like that, or I'm waiting on someone else and time is out of my hands, I have a Notion page. I can go in and I can start typing a blog, or I can send emails that will reach out to upcoming guests for the show. What else can I do? I can take a walk. I can do push-ups. I made a list of all the things I could do. I have a list. I have a database of clients in my CRM. I can always send a text, and this was great for me because it implemented the idea that as soon as time gets out of my control, and you'll find this a lot in your life, you'll start to notice these moments, and then it's a trigger to remember that you have this burglar bag that you can always go back to, and it makes you feel a lot better about how you're spending your time and your days. Another few bullet points of takeaways that I want to share with you guys are to think about a day in terms of minutes and rather than hours. So we underestimate what we can do in 10 minutes and we overestimate what we can do in 10 hours. So, or we overestimate what we can do in 10 minutes and we underestimate what we can do in 10 hours. Something to that extent. But if you think about your day in terms of minutes and making each one of those count, you're going to get so much more out of your day. And I'm not saying to get stringent down to the second as to where you're stressing about what you're doing with your time every single second of the day, but you have it within you to parse your efforts throughout the course of the day and not be constrained, and don't put yourself in the box of saying, if I only have 10 minutes, I can't get anything done. Look for those times in your day, and I've gotten so much better at doing that, and this book really helped me implement that. And another big concept he talked about is when he's making any type of decision, asking the 100-year-old version of himself how he would make that decision. And this is something I'm trying to get better at. Obviously, opting for long-term gratification over short-term gratification is something that we all struggle with. It comes into a factor into every single decision, whether it's exercising, when to wake up, going to the gym, your actions, who you spend time with. We face decisions every day. And something I'm getting better at is something that we can all get better at is in terms of business or in lifestyle. What would the 100-year-old version of yourself want you to do? And I struggle with this a lot because I'm very mindful of my exercise, and I like to sleep and have a routine that I do in a very particular way and with food and diet. And I'm not sure what the 100-year-old version of myself would say on that. I'm not sure if he would want me to take the breaks on my career, because I do spend a lot of time alone, but I think that's the price that people that want to build something, people that want to do something for themselves, that want to grow. Like, I'm trying to grow this show, I'm trying to grow the MMG design, I'm trying to grow all these things, and I want to have a massive impact. Like, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, and that's what gets me excited to do, because I work really hard, man. Like, I know we all work hard, and this book, these lessons, implementing them into my life has shown me that I'm capable of change, and aligning myself towards the purposes of what these authors are telling me, and what, hopefully, if you guys choose to read these books, these authors tell you, then you can make happen anything that comes into your head, you can make happen. And don't ever doubt that. You curate your inputs, you listen to what goes on inside of the knowledge of you that you're taking in, then nothing is out of your reach. And I truly believe that. Another thing, sorry, I got kind of deep there, but another thing that Matthew Dix talks about is to plan celebrations ahead of time. And this is something I've gotten better at, especially the past couple of weeks. If I do a hard workout, if I get up early and I go to the gym like I do every day, and that wasn't a flex, that was just a fact. But when I do the hard things, I'm just always looking for the next thing. And I think this is very common. And what I've gotten into the habit of doing is just saying, Andy, good job. You just did that. Close the feedback loop. You did a good job, because you and I and everyone else are looking for some reason. And Lord knows we have hundreds of thousands of them. We are looking for some reason to criticize ourselves. So unless we take it on ourselves to be our own biggest supporter, then unless we take a moment to just say, you know what, you just did that thing. Take a moment, stop, whether if you closed a client, whether if you finished a short-term project, edited a video, recorded a podcast, did a workout, went on a walk, ate a healthy meal, talked to someone who you're nervous to talk to, took an action, did anything that is worth remarking upon in your opinion, and be honest with yourself. But take the time and pat yourself on the back. Because if you're not your own biggest supporter, no one else will be. That was a big thing I learned from this book as well. Another thing he said, I really had a light bulb moment when he said this, is The world is filled with people who settled for far less and never fulfilled their maximum potential. You are far above average. Prove this to yourself. And some of these existential, meanderings aren't something that this is something that hit me very hard. And that it goes back to the 100-year-old version of yourself. Like, I don't want to regret. I think every day having this journal, having these books, sitting down with them and asking yourself these questions are very, very uncomfortable. But you have to face them, and becoming okay with death, becoming okay with the fact that not everything is perfect, that your life is transient. The Stoic principles, I read about these every day, and I've become so much happier since I've gotten my habits in place, and these books have really helped me do that. But if you think about it, the actions you take every day are nominal and they compound. And Someday is Today by Matthew Dix helps you realize that all things are transient. And that's a very valuable lesson to have, whether it's in facing your own mortality, whether it's in the small things that come to life in your business or your creative journey. Having that sense of perspective is something that books provide, and I highly recommend reading this book for that purpose. So that is Someday is Today by Matthew Dix. And now on to the third and final title. And this was a great read for me this year, and I honestly wasn't expecting to like this. I have read a few books by this author before, and this is one of his less popular titles. And this one hit me really hard this year. I read it back in October. And the name of the book is So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And this was a really great read for me this year. Before, I had read Deep Focus and A Word Without Email by Cal Newport. So those are some of his more popular books. But it talks about his journey from, and I'm sorry, like I said, this is the problem from the beginning, was I couldn't remember everything from these books, but I have my notes in front of me, so I'm okay. But he covers a lot of great topics in this book. This was from his perspective as a college student going to university, and he's writing it at a time, or he'll reference, he's writing at a time where he's facing a big career decision that's going to change his life, whether to be a professor in one area or it's a job decision. So he's facing this big decision, and he's reflecting upon, and he's interviewing all these people that have indexed for certain metrics in their career, which is a big reason why I started this show, man. Like, to get people on the show and interview them, pick their brain, ask them questions about what led them to where they are now, what drives them, their mindset, their passions, their habits, their traits, people they look up to, the things that they index for, is just done me so well. And I hope I'm sharing those lessons with you guys as I go. But one of his biggest points that hit me hard was he focuses on craftsmanship over passion when you're finding a fulfilling career. So he repeatedly throughout the book, he'll mock, follow your passion, and he thinks that's horrible advice. And, I've come to agree with him on that, because when you don't know what your passion is. A passion is an emotion, and emotions change over time. So when people say to follow your passion, you should always take that with a grain of salt. Another thing that is big on his list is career capital. And career capital is the essential time, basically paying your dues in an industry, and he believes that is necessary and important. So, and some of this stuff, when you're talking about career, is tough to talk about, because some of these things you can only connect the dots on looking backwards. And that was his attempt to do that in the present, is this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. But some of the main takeaways that I have written down other than that are having small bets, This is something I'm implementing into my 2024 or 2023 annual review moving into the next year. I have big goals, and part of that is doing these week-long experiments that I am adding to on the side of a page in my journal, and I encourage you guys to do this too. But this kind of originated from this book of having small bets, and that is to just have these things that you try for a short period of time, and they can be scary, they can be however, they can really push you out of your comfort zone. They can be not so scary. They can be small. But the idea is that you place these small bets, and James Clear says this as well, but you buy these small lottery tickets and you're just increasing the odds that something is going to go in your favor, be it small and insignificant to huge and nominal. So place these small bets. For me right now, I want to try a week of just adding different things to my routine, subtracting different things, doing different types of cardio in the mornings, doing different types of eating regimens, doing different types of creative work, caffeine, a lot of these tools that I think I use as a crutch sometimes. I want to just experiment with it. And the powerful thing about it is that when you commit and you call it a small bet, it's in your mind. You already know you're only going to do it for a set period of time. So that gives you a lot more willpower to take that on and be willing to face those challenges. Something that Cal noticed when he's interviewing all these people that have high career satisfaction was that they did not do what they loved. They learned to love what they do. And I think you can learn to love whatever you do. And I listened to this book. I remember at a time when I was working in a warehouse, and I was having a very existential crisis because I wasn't doing graphic design. I wasn't doing creativity. I was loading boxes in a warehouse, dude. And I worked for 10 days straight. Actually more than that, 2 weeks. So that's like 14 days straight. And I didn't like it. And the way I found a way to enjoy it was there was no one else I was hanging out with. There was no one else in there. So I would have a journal. I would put clothes on a rack and I would walk down to side, and I would put my journal up on the rack. And every time I walked down to the other end of the aisle, I would write down a note from the book I was listening to. And this happened to be one of them. And maybe the reason why this book made the list this year was because I was so hyper-focused when I was listening to it because there wasn't jack else to do. But this book was huge for me this year, and it really lifted me out of a time when I was doing that. So another thing he talks about is saying no. And one thing he recommends is to say no in order to preserve freedom, because freedom is your most valuable asset. And things he says that he indexes very high for is remote work, flexible hours, hybrid and off days, and to think of those when you're in a negotiation in terms of actual compensation. So index for those very highly. The people that are the happiest and most fulfilled in their jobs treat their jobs as if they are gearing up for battle. They treat them as a true performer. So they put a lot of time into preparing. They treat their jobs like a professional athlete would getting ready to go on the field. So if you think about it, what are the things that you can implement into your job, into your career today to turn pro? That's something I've been writing in my journal lately is, okay, today I'm turning pro. What would a professional creative entrepreneur do today? And if you just put it in that lens, you just remove yourself from the context of it, it's so much easier to just objectively put down the actions that will lead to that outcome because you're looking at it from the outside. And that's been really powerful for me. And this book really helped me realize that. So the 4 main takeaways, the 4 main rules of So Good They Can't Ignore You is 1, don't follow your passion. Love what you do because that is where you are. 2, be so good they can't ignore you. So focus on improving your capability at where you are and let that lead you to the next thing. 3 is to emphasize the importance of control and freedom. So even at the expense of money, index for freedom, vacation, hybrid, remote, things like that. And 4 is to think small but act big. have a mission, deploy small bets along the journey, discover the adjacent to possible within your field. So when you're looking at the creative entrepreneurial field right now, what's something that's pushing the limits of what's been done before? What's something that people haven't accomplished? What's something that people have accomplished, and go right up to that border and think, what's just beyond the most recent big thing? Right now, I think that's AI. So when I think of my career, I want to do something that is and that was something that people did not think was possible. That was very adjacent to possible. We had seen, some of the software nowadays, you guys see generative stuff in these creative programs like Firefly and ChatGPT, Midjourney, Google Bard, all these things that people didn't think were possible. So what does that look like in your field, and how are you going to shoot for that and make that part of your career goal, is to do something that people didn't think before was possible, or something that is adjacent to possible in your industry? So yeah, those are the 3 books that changed my creative entrepreneurial life this year. And those are my 3 recommendations. If you're just going to read 3 books, none of those are very long. All of them can be listened to in a day, probably not read in a day, depends on your reading speed. But just to wrap up, those 3 were Creativity for Sale by Radim Malinik. Number 2 was Someday is Today by Matthew Dix. And number 3, So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. Sorry, I know I got a little bit long-winded there. I think we're at like 30 or 40 minutes, but that's something I'm really proud of myself. I've gotten better at too, is I'm able to I'm able to record podcasts by myself that are pretty long. And before, dude, we're only 19 episodes in, man, and I've only been at this for 5 months now. Damn, that's crazy. I've been at this for 5 months now, but before, I couldn't even do 3 minutes, man. That's crazy. That's crazy, man. We're growing. The show's growing. I want to thank you guys. If you ever listened, shared. Like I said, the show is growing. Last week, we had Mr. Andy DeVito on. Great guest, and the response and feedback from that was incredible. So we're going to keep pushing. I have big goals for the show in 2024. I want to bring you guys as much value as I can, share my journey, share the things that get me excited to work, and keep bringing on awesome guests. I already have a slate of recorded episodes, probably 5 of the biggest guests I've ever had, and those are going to be starting off the year 2024, and we're going to be doing it with a bang. One more thing to mention, please like, comment, share, leave a review on Apple or Spotify. That means so much more than you guys can imagine. We put a lot into these episodes, and like I said, I treat these episodes like I'm turning pro. I do my research, and I'm trying to deliver. I may not be the best at what I do, but I'm turning pro. We're only 20 episodes in, and just imagine what it's going to be like when we hit triple digits and we get, Chris Williamson or Joe Rogan on the show. We'll get there one day, but thank you guys for listening. Those are the 3 books that have changed my creative entrepreneurial journey in 2023 and changed my life as a whole. Highly recommend. Those books will be linked down below. If you guys love reading and you're interested in growing your business and your mindset, I have the Business Owner's Essential Reading Checklist that I've built. Gives you a little insight on how to take notes through Notion, and it's a free database. You can download it, copy it in, and has summaries, links to download the 12, and we're adding to it as we go, so it'll probably be more than 12 by the time you're listening to it. Summaries, links to download the 12 most influential business books that I have read in my life, and here's to reading more books and learning and growing. That link for the database will be down below, totally free, and that's it for this week. So thank you guys for listening. This has been Entry 19 of the Creative Journal, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace out.